Hey, this is Ryan at Disruptarian Radio, Clovis Star Media. It's December 15th, 2018. A couple of topics. Well, the gender war in our country. I wanted to talk about it based on two experiences that I've had that I have been indirectly affected by in the last couple of weeks. So, two people that I'm very close to, two very different people. In fact, I don't even think they've ever met. But two people that I trust and I know and I wouldn't doubt had male touch them in an inappropriate way without their consent, and it wasn't full on rape or anything, but it was sexual assault. It was very tragic, just to be violated like that. Like, I saw the pain and I heard the pain from these people, and it shook me. So I don't ever want to downplay real sexual assault. However, like I've shown in other facts and statistics, is that, rape is the most falsely reported crime there is. So it's, anywhere from 14 to 45%, depending on the study, depending on the geography and the area and the country, but in New York, there's a precinct in Brooklyn that reported over 45% of rape cases investigated were fake. So there's that, but there are the real ones, and I can't even imagine. Well, I guess I can. I've been in jail. I've been threatened with sexual assault. I never actually was sexually assaulted, but I know the demeaning feeling, the fear, and the terrible victimization that people can go through without actually even being directly affected by it, but just by threats. I mean, it was, troubling to me. So I never want to downplay that. I never want to make it, seem like people shouldn't speak up. But, it hurts real victims when people lie. Like that whole thing with Brett Kavanaugh. Four people. One of them was a man who said that his friend got assaulted by Brett, and then he fessed up and said it was a lie. And then three other women have fessed up and said it was a lie. And the fourth one, the main one, could never produce any evidence. And all of her anecdotes and all of her witnesses, none of it lined up. None of them corroborated her story. None of them even knew Brett Kavanaugh. So, I mean, that was a debacle that really hurt real victims. And it was a sad case of lying, and I just absolutely despise liars, which is why I've started veracitylife.com to research lie detection software and improve it and release it for free as an open source product. I'm using MIT open source and other open source algorithms, and I really want that to be, improved, because polygraphs are worthless. Anyway, the point that I was getting at is, even though there has been these things that have shook me recently, I still want to get back to this so-called male privilege thing that mostly feminists, always talk about. So we talk about our current area, or where we live now in the United States. 33% of male boys will be sexually mutilated without their consent this year, of newborns. Males will still be at risk to be drafted in the war in the USA. They're disposable. Men have always been disposable. They're always the ones that go first. Always the ones, when it comes to lifeboats and a sinking ship, it's women and children first. When it comes to war, men go first and die first. When it comes to work-related accidents, 93% of work-related accidents are men. What about the workplace death gap? So when we talk about workplace injuries, in 2015, for example, there were 4,836 workplace deaths, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Of those, 4,492 were men and 344 were women. In other words, men suffered 93% of workplace fatalities that year. That wasn't some aberration from 2011 to 2015. Men accounted for 92.5% of all work-related deaths. That's pretty consistent all throughout history. Men die the most. Even though, the workforce is made up about 50-50 of men and women, it's pretty equal. Men do those dangerous jobs and they die first. And I was in that kind of a situation, coming home from work. I was working long hours, 96 hours a week, driving through multiple states. I came home from Seattle, where I lived in Northern California, and on my way in Oregon, I got hit head on by a drunk driver. He died. I came real close. I was at work, and thank God, because workers' compensation, made me whole again, or at least, they paid me out a little bit, paid me a couple years' salary so I could recover. But yeah, I mean, that happens, and I've been firsthand witness to that. And as a result of all these conditions, men will live an estimated 20% less years than women. Even with childbirth mortality and things like that, men will still live 20% less years than women. Males make up 93.7% of the U.S. population, of the U.S. prison population, and this is where it gets interesting with sexual assault and things like that, because in prisons, over 200,000 sexual assaults are reported. That's just the ones that are reported. There's many that go unreported, because if you're a snitch in prison, they kill you. And then it's almost equal on the outs of men getting assaulted and by women, as women get assaulted by men. It's just a little bit less, like 6% less women assault men than men assault women on the outs, on the outside of prisons. And that all of the sexual assault of women on the outs of prison, like, in regular society, is only 98,000 women. Now, I'm not to say that's a small amount. I'm just saying that comparatively to prison, that is, smaller number, much smaller, half as much as what happens in prison to men, who make up 93.7% of the U.S. prison population. And I've got all of this. If you go to this website, I've put a list of all these facts and references and sources at opinions.clovistar.com/privilege. You can see right there. But I just, I think the elites, the people that control most of, society, now I'm not even talking about the president and the prime ministers and all these. I'm talking about the real people, the money, the powerful families of the world, the Rothschilds and all those, Vanderbilts and the Morgans and, all them. I think they really pit us against each other. I think they're like, whispering in one ear and whispering in another ear, like George Soros does. He'll fund Nazis in Poland, and he'll fund Black Lives Matter in the United States. He just has to be on an opposing side that, will create as much disruption as possible to get people fighting with each other. And I think it's wrong. I think we could unite around, government corruption, taxation, without representation and without benefits and without legal standing. I mean, the Federal Reserve Act, the Income Tax Act. I mean, there's things that we can fight against that will help our kids and grandkids and future generations, live a peaceful and harmonious life, without being in debt to slavery, because when somebody owns a part of your labor, say it's 5% or say it's 35%, or heck, if you live in Sweden or one of these places, it's over 60%. Well, when somebody owns that much of your wages, you're a slave. Even if it's an insignificant amount, if somebody owns your labor, you're a slave to them. And that's one thing I'd like to see us rally around and fight against, rather than these stupid social issues that, are pointless. I mean, I get that men have benefits that women don't have, but also women have benefits that men don't have. It's a trade-off. There's a give and a take on both sides. Yes, in some ways we are created equal under the law, but if you look at us, we're different. Men have more muscle mass. Men, have height, that women don't have on average. Men have a lot of different aspects that women don't have, and women have a lot of things that men don't have. Lactation, gestation, femininity. I mean, that's a virtue. That's a strength as far as I'm concerned. Women these days, at least feminists these days, think it's such a horrible thing to be feminine or whatever. That's a gift. That's unique. That's what women have as part of their power, but it's not what men have. Men have something different. They have strength, physique, work ambition, things like that, that are different than women. So I just think we got to stop fighting. We got to start working on things. And God's sake, put your kids in martial arts. Teach your kids to fight. Teach your kids to shoot a gun. Don't let them be victims. Calling a police officer and waiting for 35 minutes for them to come is not the answer. Taking somebody to court and, being all, wrapped up in a court case, that's not the answer. Shooting someone in the groin is a better answer as far as I'm concerned. Kicking someone in the balls, better answer as far as I'm concerned. Peace out. Bless up. Merry Christmas.